serious, what is the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen a man do to defend their masculinity? Story 1 at a school dance. It was cheaper to get in if you were a couple. I can't remember exactly how much it was, probably 10 or 20 bucks cheaper. The teacher at the door was cool, so even if you came with your group of guy friends, he would just pair you off and charge you the cheaper price. These two jock-type guys refused to be paired together and demanded they each pay Thea's separate entrance fee. Story 2, stepbrother is the type of guy that refuses to hold his girlfriend's purse. Once at a small family dinner, she went to the bathroom. After a minute, she must have texted him, and he goes to check on her. They quietly argued a little and were clearly mad but trying to hide it the whole night after. Turns out she needed a tampon from her purse, and he wouldn't even bring the purse to her. She had to text my sister to bring it to her. Story 3 was giving out samples of yogurt at the grocery store. Offer a man some. Looks and disgust woman food. He was a grown man, probably in his late 30s, early 40s. What the is woman food? Story 4, I once worked for a guy who was several inches below average height. This is, of course, not anything to be bothered about, but it absolutely bothered him. Also, for context, this guy was a real. We used to joke that he had all the classic signs of compensation. He had a tall truck, was into martial arts, and spoke way too much about his sexcapades with his wife. One day, he had us over to his house and introduced me to his, and I am dead serious, miniature dachshund. He says to me, for a little dog, he is pretty well hung. Message received, boss. Edit, I should add some clarification for the sake of people's feelings. 1, this is not in any way intended to be about making fun of my boss for being short. 2, I don't actually put any stock in the notion of compensation or the so-called short man syndrome. 3, martial arts are great, discipline, exercise. Love it. Did not love him telling us constantly that he could kick our if necessary. I mean, he would literally ask us to try to take a swing at him so he could block us, for I am neutral about big trucks. 5, it seemed tacky and unprofessional for him to describe with his wife in such detail. She was also our direct supervisor. So I had to imagine so many scenarios whenever I would talk to her. 6, this was 2 decades ago. I was 20. I promise you that I now understand that it isn't okay to make fun of people for things outside of their control. Story 5, my best friend unexpectedly had a very heavy period hit her out of nowhere. While at work, she bled noticeably through her pants. She asked her boyfriend to drive to the store and pick up some tampons and a change of pants. He showed up later with some pants and no tampons. He didn't want to be seen buying them. He was 24. Story 6, I work with an insane over-the-top alpha ego boy. We all go out for drinks one night, and he literally tells me I should go fight a random stranger in the bar because we have a similar haircut. Obviously, I think he's joking because that's ridiculous. But no, he's dead serious, and goes on to call me, and says how soft I am. Goes on to tell me about all the bar fights he has been in. Needless to say, we don't invite him for drinks anymore. Story 7, some years back, I had a guy block me on FB and stop talking to me at work because I posted a pic of me in makeup that my daughter did, and then a second pic of me in a sarong with same makeup. She was 10 and wanted a model to work on. It was hilarious fun, and it will be a long-lived, great memory of me and my little girl having a good laugh. Apparently, he was talking behind my back about me being gay, and I was teaching my daughter the wrong things about what being a man meant and what girls should expect. The other blokes are as crazy as me and didn't think much of him. He even went as far as telling the show he did not think I was the right person to be working and sleeping at the station with other men. I'm a firefighter. This is a guy who was divorced twice and estranged from his kids. Has at least one violence order against him that I've since learned about. He was a worker and only lasted 8 months. Story 8, returned a Christmas gift from his wife because he was concerned GAP stood for gay and proud. Almost sold his Jeep when being joking told it was renamed to cover up G.P., standing for gay pride. Same person thought being called homophobic was synonymous being called a closeted homosexual. I suppose when so many anti-gay legislators end up caught in scandals, this isn't a huge stretch. Edit, to be clear, he was extremely angry because someone was calling him homophobic, and he thought that meant he was being accused. Story 9, back in middle school when Uggs were still in fashion, I had a pair of fake Uggs that I kept things in that I didn't want people to see, my phone, tampons, money, etc. Well, one day Aunt Flo comes along, and I attempt to sneakily put a tampon in my boot to go to the bathroom. I was still self-conscious at the time about periods. I raise my hand, get up, and try to walk to the door, trip, and my boot falls off, and my tampon rolls to this dude. He picks it up, not realizing what it is. When he realizes, he screams like a girl, and the people around start giggling as he throws it in the air. Well, he didn't like being laughed at, so to redeem himself, he grabs the tampon and starts gnawing on it with his teeth, full-on dog attack style. Then he spits it out on the floor. I was not happy, and people just kind of looked around awkwardly and went back to work. Story 10, a guy I knew in college kept bashing gay people and going on about what a real man he was. I told him when people tried to hard like him, I just assume they're insecure with their masculinity and gay. He immediately did a 180-degree turn and went, I'm very secure with my masculinity. In fact, I like flirting with guys and making them uncomfortable just because I'm so secure with being straight. If someone offered me a role in a gay, I'd even take it if there's enough zeros in that check. I'm really secure. He came out as gay a few years ago. Story 11 showed up with my friend to a barn party, and when her ex-boyfriend noticed she was there, he made sure she was watching and then proceeded to chug the rest of a huge frickin' jug of peppermint schnapps he had been holding. This wasn't a handle either. It was like milk gallon sized. But peppermint schnapps, why, we're in a bar and everyone else just had beer, so I don't even know where he got it. Like, it's not the manliest of drinks, but he committed and he finished it. Honestly, thinking back, I actually was sort of impressed, so I guess mission accomplished on his part. Story 12, my now very ex-boyfriend said that he would refuse to buy me pads or tampons. Even in an emergency situation, he claimed it was something I should have been in preparation for myself. I compared it to me not being willing to bring him toilet paper if he needed it. When we lived together, he approached me in regards to the small piece of toilet paper that had a bit of period blood on it, claiming that he wouldn't want me to fall into the nasty habit of leaving ghosts visible. I took way too long to dump that guy. Story 13, my first night working in a sleazy hotel, these giant guys came to party, and they invited my trainer and I to join. We were 19. Why not? We go up there to find 3 dudes who were so obviously loaded up on steroids, proving who was the toughest by putting their hands on the electric stove burner before taking shots. Story 14, man. I know a guy who's completely given up on straight solely because he can see the man's penis. I know this because he's so incredibly vocal about watching exclusively lesbian sans dildos or anything remotely phallic and that it's gay to do otherwise. Story 15, my brother won't eat foods that resemble semen. No mayonnaise, no yogurt or sour cream. Nothing. He won't even eat the melted frosting on a Cinnabon. Masculinity, so fragile. Story 16, my husband has long hair and usually has a few hair ties on his wrist because of it. One of the guys I used to work with also has long hair and couldn't find a suitable replacement for the rubber band head lost. My husband, upon noticing, offered him his last hair tie that just so happened to be pink. And this dude went a tirade saying how he wasn't some F and wasn't going to wear it. Then went through the rest of the day in 102 heat, soaked with sweat and his hair just getting all stuck to his face. And this same dude also refused to ever put on sunscreen or wear gloves even though we worked outside with tools pretty much every day. So had constantly be sunburned and peeling and always had these huge painful looking blisters on his hands. Story 17, a guy tried to emasculate me in my weightlifting class. The problem being he had never lifted in his life. It should be noted that this guy was a one-upper to AT. If anyone had a talent or had anything remotely interesting to say, he was there to outdo them. I was showing him how to do bench press, and I was doing 155, which is my max. Not a lot of weight, but again, it's a lot when you've never lifted. He proceeded to attempt the weight I was doing while I was at the water fountain. Unfortunately, I couldn't get there before he gave himself a hairline fracture in his sternum. I would have felt worse for him if he wasn't such a dickhead. Story 18, I used to work at a bakery where each clerk had to bring their own pens to have customers sign receipts with if they paid with a card. I had a pink pen with a little duck on top. And one day a customer refused to sign with it. He got really mad that I didn't have another pen and walked out to his car to find a pen that wasn't girly. Story 19, some guys will refuse to walk through a door that a woman holds open for them. They insist on holding the door open for the woman instead. Even if she got to the door, first it's really frustrating and condescending when you're the woman it happens to. It reminds you that they see you as a woman first and a person second, if at all. Story 20, went on a date with a cop. He paid for dinner and we went for coffee. I quickly paid for the drinks, and his attitude turned sour after that. He thought that by me paying, it made him less of a man. It was just a nice gesture. He's still single. Story 21. When one of his female friends suggested that his personal beliefs showed he was insecure about his masculinity, he said he'd prove he was manly by physically fighting her. Nothing shows you're manly like wanting to fight someone who's shorter and lighter than you. Story 22 was at a house party once hosted by a video editor friend. Along with his fiancée and a bunch of her girlfriends, he really wanted to show us all some comically bad amateur he had been hired to edit and distribute. He didn't work in typically edited wedding videos and the like, but the video was weird enough to be more unintentionally funny than sexy. At the point that the girl in the video first opened her legs, the editor loudly announced to the room full of women and his own fiancé, man, there's just nothing attractive about a vagina. It wasn't an I might be gay way, more of a man, women are lucky we tolerate them as disgusting as they are. Tone of voice. The room was silent. As the only other guy there, I felt a wave of pity and embarrassment for him and looked his way. His fiancée crossed her arms and slouched further down beside him. He did not notice any of it. Story 23. A guy at my work once beat up a disabled person because he thought he was hitting on his girlfriend. He wasn't. He had Down syndrome, and she would hang out with him because no one else would. Story 24. A coworker brought his 5-year-old son into work last week. I said hi, then gave him markers and paper and let him draw in my office. Today, my coworker tells me that his son wants to come back to draw with me again. My coworker continues and says that I need to play with his son, not give him paper to draw. I ask why, and my coworker answers that he doesn't want his kid to draw because ITLL make him gay and unmanly. He needs him to run around rambunctiously, so he won't be impacted by the womanly art of drawing. My mouth was on the floor. I knew my coworker was homophobic and worked hard to defend his masculinity, but this was too much. Story 25. He had a crush on his classmate, but couldn't admit it to even himself. He proceeded to constantly make fun of that classmate of his on Facebook, saying things like crush is dumb, haha, hoping that it proves that the feelings were not attraction. That person was me. Story 26. Some guy decided to try to pick up a car after his girlfriend. Joked that he was weak. I was there, and all I saw was the guy looking offended to what she had said, then bent down and gripped the car by the side. He ended up crumbling onto the road, sobbing that he didn't manage the impossible. Funniest thing I've seen all week. Story 27. When I was a teenager, I shotgunned a whole bottle of gin. People do this with beer. I guess he thought it would be cool with hard liquor. I guess the big issue is that you don't feel anything while you are downing it. He collapsed moments after finishing. He was in the emergency room within the hour after passing out and being unrousable. Story 28. My dad will not tolerate being served food that was set to look pretty. Once he ordered a dish with coconut shrimp, and when it came out, his presentation looked very cute, and my dad immediately recoiled in disgust and said, "This isn't what I ordered. Take it back." We were all confused because he had in fact ordered it, and the waitress was just beside herself. My dad then said, "It's too feminine." The waitress ended up taking the plate back, and they rearranged the shrimp as to not offend my dad, as if he were a picky 2-year-old. Story 29. Bartender here. Dudes having to drink out of lowball glasses. I don't know what it is, but there's a large subset of the population that thinks drinking anything in a stemmed or tall glass isn't manly. Bro, drinking your vodka soda in a rocks glass doesn't make you like urine, madman. Story 30. The office I work in takes about 6 hours to warm up, so winter mornings are ridiculously chilly. I have a hot water bottle that I fill up and have on my lap or back to warm me. Without fail, male colleague whines about how unfair it is that he can't use one because they are for girls. Story 31. My friend's brother-in-law and ex-boyfriend are both Latino. They both have the Latino machismo thing going on, particularly in regard to spicy food. She said she has seen them both so overspice their food with chili to the point that they were sweating and nearly crying, while both of them claim to have liked it that way. They would only do that when they were around each other, though they would eat hot food otherwise, just not as hot. So basically just ruin their food and burn their mouth for the sake of being able to say who likes their food hotter, because eating hotter food apparently equals more manly. Story 32. I have a cousin that'll only eat meat and as little of non-meat foods as possible. He sees meat as being very manly and salad and stuff as being feminine. For example, he'll eat a bacon burger and only tolerates a bun because it makes holding it easier. He'll have bacon for breakfast, a burger for lunch, and steak or fish for dinner. Unsurprisingly, he's had 3 heart attacks and severe atherosclerosis. So being manly seems to be mainly about dying in his 50s to heart disease. Story 33. I have a friend who has a strong tendency to treat out our girlfriends, whether it be food, movie tickets, giving rides, etc. He would block a girl on Venmo when she insists to pay for herself, like, dude, let the lady pay for herself. She isn't some helpless weak princess that you treat her as. It's annoying, and I just don't feed him any attention when he pulls that off now. Story 34. Kick a dog. I don't know the details, but he said the dog did something that meant you're in dog language. So he had to show the dog he didn't know. God, I hated that guy. FYI, the dog got a better home not long after that cause the douchebag wasn't supposed to have a dog at his house. Story 35. I used to have a friend who was basically the epitome of over-masculinity. By this, I mean he would do every single thing he could to grab the attention of girls, including, but not limited to, burping as loud as possible in public, thinking it was manly and liberating, laughing and scream-talking at an obnoxiously high volume in hopes other females in the vicinity would hear. Brag about his ventures with several girls, which proved to all be false upon investigating. Basically try to prove his frugal lifestyle was more manly than everyone else's, although at one point I would have considered him as a close friend. I've always disliked the way he acted, and am so glad I was able to cut him out of my life. Story 36 Draw between the male patrons in the bar. I worked at dramatically flinging the straw. I was required to put in their drinks back at me, with a loudly declared, "I am not AFT. I don't need a straw," and my stepdad refusing to carry a shopping bag from tech-based store because it had drawstrings, and to quote him, "Am not as so, could you carry this please?" LOL. Story 37, I had a guy tell me I had a man. I walk ahead while we were in my part of the city, where clearly I was the one who knew the way. It ended up with me turning the right way, and then him jumping in front of me and walking ahead. It was kind of goofy, but I could tell that at the core he was serious. Story 38 friend of mine had a wardrobe malfunction and flashed her crotch accidentally. A tool bag at the bar pointed out by loudly yelling, I saw your boyfriend," responded by flipping out and yelling at her about how dare she show some other bloke her. She had to placate him that it was still his. Story 39, one of my idiot friends tried to date multiple girls at once and seemingly didn't see anything wrong with it. He was picked on for a bit for being girly, and rumors went around that he was secretly transgender. High school students are immature. So he decided to date a lot of girls from Tinder and buy into the stereotype to prove he was manly enough. Kid was only 17 too. I at first felt bad for him, but he matched up with 4 girls on Tinder and cheated on all of them at the same time. We're not friends anymore. Story 40, probably not the most ridiculous, but at the birthday party of my godchild last year, I was drinking some red wine. Then the boyfriend of my niece, who has the size of a rolled-up crepe, just looked at me and said, "Real men drink beer." Responded jokingly that beer's for the hooliganistic, marginalized groups of society. I do like a good beer every now and then. I obviously wasn't being serious. Got a phone call from my sister the next day, niece's mother asking me what the I said to the boy, because he was all in tears, throwing a tantrum. FYI, he was 20 at the time of the event. Story 41, for a long time, my cousin refused to wear any item of clothing that was not white, black, or brown. One time he came to pick me up in his car, and he was wearing a yellow polo shirt, and he was almost shaking nervously and looked at me and said, "What, you're not going to make fun of me?" Story 42, I bought some perfume once, but accidentally got the poor home version. So I gave it to my dad. He refused to use it because it was for poofs. I was at the pub with my sisters and 3 of their male friends. At the time, I was fat, very fat, and a bit socially awkward. Male friend 1 started being a bit of deliberately trying to make me uncomfortable. Eventually, he claimed that he was a total magnet and that chicks couldn't resist him, then turned to me and said, "You'd sleep with me, wouldn't you?" I looked him up and down and said, "That depends. Are you rich? If not, no thanks." His friends howled with laughter, and he spluttered angrily. He then picked up his full pint and dumped it on me. His friends picked him up under his arms and escorted him out, by which I mean they flung him down 2 steps in the street and ordered him to go home. They apologized a lot. One took me home to change, and we all had a perfectly nice night out. Story 43, a friend of mine once refused a shower for over a week because his mother had bought the lemon-scented shower gel rather than the manly mint one he was used to. His defense, "Even if I haven't showered, at least I still smell like a bloke," sufficed to say we didn't hang around him until he got his mini shower. Story 44, me and my gals are very open about taking about period stuff. Some guy friends were near us, heard us, and started berating us and lecturing us on how disgusting we were being. One of us literally said they were on it, and we had a little chat about cramps. That's it. No disgusting talk of blood sneezes and stuff that might actually make someone uncomfortable. So I get out a sanitary towel, start waving it about. Then my mate grabs it and throws it at them, and they freak screaming and dashing about. It was madness. Story 45, many years ago, I worked with a very sweet woman at McDonald's named Nadia. She got promoted to shift supervisor, but about halfway through the training, her husband realized she'd be making more money than he was, and he demanded she refuse the promotion. She did. I will never forget the heartbreak in her eyes when she turned in her new uniform with a cute little ascot and took back the old scrubs. Story 46, I used to be a manager in a pub. Someone came in and asked for a San Miguel, and not in a gay glass. I was taken back. I read that he essentially didn't want the normal glass the beer is served in, which is like a chalice. This glass is designed for the beer and keeps its head in fizz. I picked up the glass I knew he didn't want, and he went no. I said, "Not in a glass." So I just responded, "I can't tell the gender and sexuality of a glass. Can you help?" So he laughed and pointed at the one he wanted, boring pint glass. He came back to me minutes later and said, "My beer's really flat." "No, sir, that's the glass you wanted to protect your fragile masculinity and sexuality." Poured into the proper glass, and it got its fizz and foam back. He scuttled off, argued that women should blow guys, but guys shouldn't reciprocate. Story 47, I'm 5, and my ex-husband is like 57. He wouldn't let me wear heels when we went out together because it looked weird having a woman near his height at his side. Story 48, I used to hook up with a guy with a rather small penis. Size never really bothered me, so I didn't think twice about it the first time I saw it. The only reason I really remember that it was below average was that Head defended every time he took his pants off. Like every time, Head say some variation of that's just normal size without being prompted to. And as a man, I get the importance we can attach to this body part, so I was sympathetic to what he said until he started to belittle me in every single way he could. No matter what I do, He'd find some fault with me and immediately vocalize those feelings. After a while, I began to suspect he was maybe overcompensating for his diminutive member by trying to make me feel worse and thus himself feel better. I don't know. Penises do weird things to some people. Story 49, my husband drives a red Fiat. We call it the Chili Pepper. When I ride with him, I'm always shocked by how many guys in huge trucks feel the need to aggressively rev their engine at him. Story 50, you mean aside from buying really loud big shiny gas guzzlers. Once I went out to the pub with a work friend for UFC, not my thing, but a night out is a night out, and he brought his other friend a couple. Anyways, well before the matches started, I had mentioned in passing the what are you up to question that I was dealing with my recent SBK, eye surgery. Anyways, the woman was, I guess, interested since she was asking 20 questions. 5 minutes later, the guy is full on, yo, bro, stop talking with my wife. You want to fight? Let's go, bro, outside, fight, bro, fight, bro. It was surreal. The guy thought I was flirting with his wife over the inner details of laser eye surgery. Needless to say, I'm sure he's the sort that contributes to domestic violence stats. Story 51, I once escalated a fight with 10 people at the movie theater. They threw popcorn in my head for no reason in front of a girl I was with. They pushed me down the stairs and broke my jaw. Story 52, me guy likes to wear makeup. My friend also guy loves table tennis told me I'm stupid and weird for wearing makeup. I literally only put foundation on and some highlighter then. I told him imagine table tennis would mostly be a female sport and you like it. Wouldn't you still play because it's fun and wouldn't care if it's a mostly female sport? He said he would immediately quit and do something else. El Mayo, that guy is playing since like 5 years. Story 53, a group of kids over a decade ago. We were all in our teens. Invited me over to play some games. They used to gather and play FIFA. Now, hey, race the kicker pun intended, trust me. When you lost a game, you had to get kicked into by everyone one kick each. I mean, I would never do this one-on-one. Can you imagine a group of 15? I don't think I ever said no to playing a video game that fast. Only positive I see in this is those dumbass were lowering their chances of procreation, Darwinism, and all that. Story 54, in high school gym class. We were all playing a game of basketball. There were like 4 girls, including me in the class, and the rest were guys anyway. The guys would only pass the ball to each other. Even if a girl stood right in front of them, screaming, I am open, they would ignore her, look for another guy, and pass to them. At one point, some guy actually passed the ball to me, and I was so surprised that I dropped it. SMH, I lost any chance I ever had of touching the ball from that point on. Eventually, the gym teacher made up a rule that we had to pass to a person of the opposite. It's gym class, not the Olympics. No need to be so weird about passing the ball to a girl. Story 55, the father in a family I grew with as neighbors was very much so a sort of traditional masculine guy, mechanic, family patriarch, all that. Turns out he had naturally dry skin, and keeping his feet cramped up in work boots all day led to him having some nasty skin cracks on his feet. After one cut got infected, he went to the doctor, who told him he really needed to exfoliate and moisturize his skin. Moisturizer is for women. Ignored the doctor. A couple years, and probably a handful of infections later, he refused to go back to the doctor and insisted it would get better on his own, until the infection got so bad they had to amputate his big toe on his right foot, all because he didn't want to moisturize. Story 56, I used to get my dad with this all the time. A real man doesn't get overtaken on the motorway. A real man builds his own shed hours of fun, as it always got him. Just the generation he is from, I guess. Story 57, my husband buys storage units and flips them. Whenever he finds and sells Barbies, he invariably gets hate mail from insecure men attacking his masculinity for selling a product just for girls, whatever. He just laughs and collects his money. Story 58, my GF tends bar on a particularly rowdy College Avenue, and a dude that apparently used to stalk her from a previous serving gig former coworker came in to flirt with her. She obviously wasn't having it and kept shutting him down and walking away. He called her a stuck-up, and she pushed him backward out onto the patio, and before he could retaliate, 2 of her male coworkers got between them and threatened to beat his. This MF then proceeds to get 2 bicycle cops called on him, but then refuses to leave because my GF and coworkers assaulted him, and they should be arrested. I wasn't there, but according to her, the cops were dumbfounded and told her to get a restraining order. Dude was so emasculated from the push that he proceeded to disobey cops and try to get my GF arrested. Story 59, my friend's husband is such a macho man, and I don't like him very much because of it. At my wedding, we had cocktails and general drinks for everyone. The cocktails had straws in them. He refused to drink out of straw because it's gay. He also greeted my husband one day by doing a really odd handshake-hug combo. Looked my husband in the eye and said that's how real men greet each other. Story 60, a guy I used to know loved Virginia Slims for some odd reason. He would always go to the same store to get them. Always for his wife. He wasn't married. Story 61, didn't see, but a man fought off a mountain lion long enough for his kids to escape. Fighting a wild cougar is pretty ridiculous, and those kids are the literal fruit of his loins, thus his masculinity. Story 62, I drive a small compact car Mazda 2 and was sitting at a red light with my windows down. This super lifted truck rolls up next to me and yells at me, "Nice girl car." I just roll my eyes and continue listening to my podcast. He then starts revving his truck to get me to notice and keeps saying dumb things like this is a real man's vehicle. I just don't acknowledge him. As soon as the light turns green, he floors it, only to be pulled over a couple yards down the road. Story 63, I have seen a 54 twig of a man attempt to start a fight with 64 big me to try and prove he is tough in front of his girlfriend. I lifted him off the ground and told him next time I would not put him down gently. He left. Story 64, in Russian language, there is often male or female form of verbs or adjectives. For example, if someone says, "I'm hungry," correctly, you know if it's said by a man or a woman. So I got a friend who cannot quote song lyric without changing it to male form. And if it's not possible, cannot say it at all. Story 65, when I was a kid, our class took a trip to one of those climbing gardens, with ropes securing you and ropes spanned between the trees to make for easy climbing. At one point, you could jump up a tree and be caught by the ropes. It wasn't all that high, so no real risk there. One kid told the other kids that if you were a man, that would obviously hurt, as you're secured between your legs. Despite the obvious fact that anyone who designed that thing would be aware of male anatomy and would crush you with some badly designed gear, that didn't stop a group of around 10 boys pretending to have hurt there by jumping down there, despite all of them knowing that it didn't hurt. Just so that they were not the first kid to say it didn't hurt me. So not to invoke a second kid saying that he wasn't a man because of it. Kids and masculinity are weird. Story 66, a friend of mine said that after the age of 12, his dad refused to hug him because he didn't want to make him gay. Fun fact, the friend did come out in college. Story 67, this has suddenly dredged up memories of a guy I knew when I was 16. He got mad at me for waving to a woman once and mouthing hi. He legit thought that made me gay. Apparently, you're supposed to either not say hi or shout it. But he wanted to watch with me once. When I turned down this incredible offer, he got mad and accused me of being gay because I was too afraid to do that with him, because obviously that proved I wanted him. There's probably more I'm forgetting. He was actually a cool guy, but he had the weirdest hang-ups. Story 68, I live in a city, and I constantly see dads pushing strollers with only one arm. The other arm is never actually doing anything important. It's just swinging at his side, as if to call attention to the superior manly strength it requires to push the stroller single-handedly. Story 69 claimed that had disowned his future if ever he had one son, if he were gay, and claimed boarding school makes guys gay. I couldn't believe the nonsense this guy was saying and flatly refused to go on a date with him. Story 70, I was working as a costume character at a Valentine's Day diner evening event. Me and some other workers were dressed head to toe in a cloak and mask costume, so you can't see the person underneath. The costume is meant to be a bit scary and intimidating, but nothing too bad. So the dinner is finished and the guests started coming to the attraction. I had done a few of these events before and know that there will be a lot of drunk people, but at first everything was fine. We scared a few people and had some photos and everyone seemed to be having a good time. Then this really short man comes up to me and just stands in front of me and starts staring and pulling a very creepy smile and licking his lips. I knew instantly that this guy was trouble, but played along to hope he would go away. I tried to make him jump and took his glasses, and he just stands there. I am behind a barrier because there had been problems in the past with characters getting harassed, so we had to keep some kind of protection between us and the guests. The barrier is small, and I didn't have much room, so I try to walk away. But he follows. His wife, I think, notices and comes up to him and says to him, "It's okay, honey, you win." You win, and he walks off and does it again to another character. I don't think he liked that we were female characters that weren't scared or interested in him. Not long after that, he starts to be abusive to his wife and staff and throws his drink. Security then watch him, and when he notices, he kicks off and storms up to one of my coworkers who is standing by tensor barrier. And she asked if he is okay, as the area he was walking into was closed, and he pushes the barrier into her and goes into the area. Then he starts to threaten one of my managers and finally squared up to security, who are all a lot bigger. They take him outside, and he starts throwing things and in front of other guests, so the police are called, and he then fights with them and gets arrested. At first we thought he was just very drunk, but later his wife said that she was glad he got arrested, otherwise she would have been at the receiving end of his rage when they got home.